The background check for my mother's job revealed their real name. The name, Patricia Lynn Hendricks, stared back at me from the computer screen, but that wasn't the name on the job application sitting on my desk. The application read, Michelle Roberts, complete with a different birth date and social security number. I blinked hard, wondering if the fluorescent lights in our cramped HR office were playing tricks on my eyes at 2:47 p.m. on what had started as a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. But no. The background check results were crystal clear. The fingerprints submitted for Michelle Roberts, applicant for our accounting clerk position, belonged to Patricia Lynn Hendricks. My mother. The woman who walked out of our apartment in Sacramento when I was 11, leaving behind nothing but a note that said she'd be back soon and $17 in a cookie jar. That was 17 years ago. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the report. 3 outstanding warrants in California. 2 counts of identity theft in Oregon. A trail of unpaid child support totaling $47,892, money she owed to me, money that could have kept the lights on during those months when my grandmother worked double shifts at the diner just to make rent. The photograph attached to her real identity was recent, maybe 2 years old. She looked good, better than she had any right to look. Her auburn hair was professionally styled, not the greasy mess I remembered. She was smiling, the kind of confident smile that comes with reinventing yourself completely. The kind of smile that probably charmed her way into whatever life she built as Michelle Roberts. I thought about the woman who had sat across from my colleague Janet just yesterday morning, interviewing for a position that would give her access to sensitive financial information. Janet had been impressed, told me afterward that Michelle seemed genuine and had great references. Of course she did. My mother had always been convincing when she needed something. The background check had been routine until now. Our company, Meridian Financial Solutions, wasn't particularly high security, but we handled enough sensitive client data that criminal background checks were standard. Most came back clean, or with minor infractions that we discuss and usually overlook. But this wasn't a parking ticket or a bar fight from college. My phone buzzed. A text from Janet, hey, did Michelle Roberts' background check come through yet? Mr. Harrison wants to make an offer by end of week if she's clean. She'd be perfect for the role. Perfect. Right. I stared at the screen until the words started to blur. Patricia Lynn Hendricks had 4 other aliases listed in her file. She'd been busy. Somewhere out there, she probably had a husband who thought he knew who he married, maybe kids who called her mom and actually got to keep her. The thought made my chest tight. The smart thing, the legal thing, would be to flag this immediately. Print the report, walk it to Janet's office, let the system work exactly as it was designed to. Patricia Lynn Hendricks would disappear again, this time in handcuffs, and Michelle Roberts would cease to exist. But for the first time in 17 years, I knew exactly where my mother was. She had no idea her abandoned child was sitting here, holding her entire fabricated life in their hands. She'd filled out the application so carefully, probably never imagining that the scared 11-year-old she'd left behind was now the person standing between her and consequences. The cursor blinked on my screen, waiting for me to make a decision that would change everything. I pulled up her application again, studying every lie she'd crafted with surgical precision. Michelle Roberts, born March 15, 1978, 3 years younger than Patricia's actual birth date. Previous employment at Sterling & Associates in Portland, a company that had conveniently closed 2 years ago, making verification impossible. Current address, 1247, Maple Grove Lane, Riverside Heights. 20 minutes from our office. 20 minutes from where I lived. The references were masterful fabrications. I called the first number listed, supposedly her former supervisor David Chin. A pleasant male voice answered on the second ring. David Chin speaking. Hi, this is Alex from Meridian Financial Solutions. I'm calling about a reference for Michelle Roberts. A pause. Oh yes, Michelle. Wonderful employee. Very reliable, excellent with numbers. We were sorry to lose her when we downsized. The man was convincing, I'd give him that. But I could hear something in the background, a woman's voice coaching him, whispering words just loud enough for me to catch, tell them about the quarterly reports. She was particularly good with our quarterly reports, David continued smoothly. My mother's voice. I was certain of it. She'd found someone to pose as her reference, probably paying him or calling in a favor. The audacity was breathtaking. I hung up and immediately ran a reverse lookup on the number. It belonged to a cell phone registered to Kevin Martinez in Phoenix, Arizona. Not David Chin. Not Portland. Another piece of her elaborate con. The second reference went straight to voicemail, a generic greeting that could have been anyone. The third number was disconnected. My computer chimed with an email notification. Janet again. Also, I forgot to mention, Michelle asked if she could start earlier than the standard 2 weeks. She seemed eager to begin contributing right away. Just FYI for when you process everything. Eager to start. Of course she was. Patricia always moved fast when she sensed opportunity, and she'd always been good at reading people. She'd probably sized up our small company perfectly, figured out we'd be less thorough than a major corporation, more likely to rush through paperwork if we liked a candidate. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Patricia Lynn Hendricks Sacramento. The results made my stomach drop. The first hit was a recent news article from the Sacramento Bee, dated just 6 weeks ago. Local woman seeks information about missing mother. The accompanying photo showed a girl who couldn't have been older than 16, with dark hair and serious eyes that looked startlingly familiar. Stephanie Hendricks, 16, is hoping someone in the community might have information about her mother Patricia, who disappeared 3 months ago. She just didn't come home one day, Stephanie told this reporter. Her car was still in the driveway, her purse was on the kitchen counter. We don't know what happened to her. The article went on to describe how Patricia had been living in Sacramento under her real name, working as a bookkeeper for a small medical practice. She'd been married to Robert Hendricks for 8 years. Stephanie was quoted as saying her mother had never mentioned having other children. Other children. As if I were ancient history, something that happened to someone else entirely. The timeline clicked into place with sickening clarity. Patricia hadn't just reinvented herself once, she'd been doing it repeatedly, cycling through identities whenever things got complicated. When the authorities got too close, or when maintaining her lies became too difficult, she simply vanished and became someone new. Now she was Michelle Roberts, and somewhere in Sacramento, a 16-year-old girl was probably lying awake wondering if her mother was dead in a ditch. Just like I had, 17 years ago. I called the Sacramento Police Department before I could second-guess myself. Missing persons, Detective Morrison speaking. Hi, I'm calling about Patricia Hendricks. There was a newspaper article about her daughter looking for her. Yeah, I remember that case. You have information about Patricia's whereabouts? My throat felt dry. She's alive. She's in Riverside Heights, going by Michelle Roberts. She applied for a job at my company. A pause, then the sound of papers shuffling. Can you hold on a moment? Let me pull up the file. While Detective Morrison rustled through paperwork, I stared at Stephanie Hendricks' photo on my screen. She had Patricia's nose, but her eyes held something my mother's never had, genuine worry for someone else's well-being. This kid had been losing sleep over a woman who'd probably forgotten her existence the moment she walked out the door. Okay, I'm back, Morrison said. Here's the thing, Patricia Hendricks isn't actually missing. We closed that case last week. What do you mean closed? The husband came in with some new information. Turns out Patricia cleaned out their joint savings account the day before she disappeared. $43,000. He also found evidence she'd been using his credit cards to make cash advances. When we explained that this looked more like fraud than a missing person situation, he decided he didn't want to pursue it. And the daughter? Stepdaughter, actually. Not his biological kid, and not Patricia's either according to the birth certificate he provided. Patricia adopted her when she married Robert, but apparently that was all fabricated too. The girl's real name is Stephanie Walsh. Her biological parents died in a car accident in 2019, and somehow Patricia ended up as her guardian through forged documents. I felt like I'd been punched. So Patricia stole this girl's inheritance. That's what it looks like. Robert's trying to maintain custody of Stephanie while we sort out the legal mess, but without proper documentation. Morrison's voice trailed off. The girl's probably going to end up in the system unless we can track down legitimate relatives. What about the warrants? The identity theft charges? Still active. Patricia Lynn Hendricks is wanted in 3 states now. If you can confirm her location, we can coordinate with local police for pickup. After I hung up, I sat staring at Michelle Roberts' carefully crafted application. My mother hadn't just abandoned me, she'd turned it into a business model. How many other Stephanies were out there? How many other kids had she collected and discarded when they became inconvenient or when their trust funds ran dry? My phone rang. Internal call from Janet's extension. Alex? Is everything okay with the Roberts background check? Mr. Harrison is breathing down my neck about getting her started. Apparently she called this morning asking if she could come in tomorrow to fill out tax paperwork. Tomorrow. Patricia was getting impatient, probably sensing that staying in one place too long was dangerous. I wondered how long she'd planned to milk this particular identity before moving on to the next one. Actually, Janet, there are some complications with her background check. Can you schedule a meeting with Mr. Harrison for this afternoon? Complications? She seemed so legitimate. What kind of complications? I looked at the warrant information on my screen. Patricia Lynn Hendricks. Wanted for fraud, identity theft, child abandonment, and now apparently whatever legal term existed for stealing orphans. The kind that require police involvement, I said. But as I spoke the words, I realized I wasn't sure I meant them. Because somewhere in Riverside Heights, at 1247, Maple Grove Lane, my mother was probably making dinner and practicing being Michelle Roberts, having no idea that her past had finally caught up with her. The question was, did I want to be the one to spring the trap? I stared at the address for 20 minutes before I made the decision that would haunt me for months afterward. Instead of calling Detective Morrison back, instead of walking down the hall to Mr. Harrison's office, I grabbed my keys and told Janet I was taking a late lunch. 1247, Maple Grove Lane sat in one of those cookie-cutter subdivisions where every house looked like it had been stamped from the same mold. Beige siding, brown trim, identical mailboxes. I parked 3 houses down and watched through my windshield as a woman I hadn't seen in 17 years watered the roses in her front garden. She looked so normal. Suburban. The kind of woman who probably knew her neighbors' names and remembered to put the garbage cans out on collection day. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized cardigan, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. If I'd passed her in the grocery store, I wouldn't have given her a second glance. But it was definitely Patricia. The way she held her left shoulder slightly higher than her right, a habit from an old injury she'd never told me about. The methodical way she moved the sprinkler from bush to bush, the same careful precision she'd used when counting pills at the pharmacy job she'd had when I was 10. A school bus rumbled down the street and stopped 2 houses past hers. 3 kids got off, backpacks bouncing as they ran toward different houses. One of them, a boy who couldn't have been older than 8, veered toward Patricia's house, calling out, "Mom," as he dropped his backpack on the walkway. My chest went cold. She had another child. Another kid who trusted her, who expected her to be there when he got home from school. A kid who probably had no idea his mother's real name, or that she'd done this before. Patricia scooped the boy up in a hug that looked genuine, ruffling his dark hair as she asked him something I couldn't hear from the car. He was animated, talking with his hands, showing her something crumpled in his pocket. A spelling test, maybe, or a drawing. The kind of mundane after-school moment I used to dream about during those first few months after she left. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. This is Michelle Roberts. I interviewed yesterday for the accounting position. I was wondering if you might have an update on my background check. I'm very excited about the opportunity to join the Meridian team. Thank you, Michelle. She'd somehow gotten my direct number. Probably called the main line and convinced someone to transfer her, or claimed she needed to clarify something about her application. Classic Patricia, never wait for information to come to you when you could extract it yourself. I watched her guide the boy inside, her hand protective on his shoulder. Through the front window, I could see them moving around what looked like a normal family kitchen. Patricia, Michelle, opened the refrigerator and pulled out what might have been ingredients for an after-school snack. A blue Honda Civic pulled into the driveway, and a man in a rumpled business suit got out, loosening his tie as he walked toward the front door. Average height, thinning hair, the kind of tired smile that comes with a long day at a job that pays the bills but doesn't inspire passion. He looked like an accountant or maybe a middle manager somewhere. Patricia's type had always been predictable, steady men with steady incomes who wouldn't ask too many questions about her past. The man kissed Patricia on the cheek as he walked through the door, and she leaned into him briefly before returning to whatever she was preparing. Through the window, I watched him greet the boy with what looked like genuine affection, helping him with homework at the kitchen table while Patricia moved around them, creating the kind of domestic tableau that belonged on a greeting card. This wasn't just another con. This was a life. A real life with real people who loved Michelle Roberts and had no idea Patricia Lynn Hendricks existed. My phone rang. Janet again. Alex, where are you? Mr. Harrison wants that background check report in 20 minutes. He's already called Michelle to schedule her start date for Monday. Monday. 4 days away. Tell him there are still some verifications pending, I managed. What kind of verifications? It's been 3 days already. I watched the boy show Patricia his homework, saw her point to something on the page with patient attention. The kind of attention she'd never had time for when I was 8 years old and struggling with multiplication tables. The complicated kind, I said, and hung up. I drove home in a daze, Patricia's perfect suburban life replaying in my mind like a movie I couldn't turn off. The boy's excited voice calling, Mom, echoed in my ears as I sat in my empty apartment, staring at my laptop screen where Michelle Roberts' fake application still glowed. My grandmother's photo sat on the bookshelf across from me, the woman who'd raised me after Patricia left, who died 3 years ago still hoping her daughter would come to visit. Gran had worked herself into an early grave trying to fill the gap Patricia had left behind, never knowing that the woman she grieved for was out there collecting new families like souvenirs. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Robert Hendricks Sacramento. What I found made my stomach turn. Robert Hendricks had died by suicide 2 weeks after Patricia disappeared. The obituary was brief, survived by stepdaughter Stephanie Walsh. Services pending. The comments section told the real story. Friends and co-workers expressing shock, mentioning how devoted he'd been to Stephanie, how the financial betrayal and losing custody had destroyed him. Patricia hadn't just stolen money and disappeared. She'd killed a man as surely as if she'd pulled a trigger. My hands shook as I scrolled through more search results. There was a GoFundMe page for Stephanie's legal fees, trying to raise money to fight for emancipation so she wouldn't have to enter foster care. It had raised $347 of a $15,000 goal. I stared at Stephanie's photo again, this 16-year-old girl who'd lost everyone because my mother decided she was done playing house. The girl who'd probably never know that Patricia was currently tucking another stolen child into bed 20 miles away. My phone buzzed with another text from Michelle's number. Hi again. I don't mean to be pushy, but I gave notice at my current position and my last day is Friday. Would it be possible to expedite the background check process? I have excellent references if you need additional verification. Thank you so much. Current position. Another lie, since her references were fake and she'd been stealing from Robert Hendricks as recently as 2 months ago. But the casual confidence in her message was pure Patricia, always assuming she could charm her way through any obstacle. I was typing a response when my apartment buzzer rang. The front desk intercom crackled to life. Alex? There's a woman here to see you. Says her name is Michelle Roberts. My blood went cold. Patricia was here. At my building. Somehow she'd figured out who I was. Alex? Should I send her up? I looked around my apartment with new eyes, the photos on my bookshelf, the bills on my counter with my full name. Alexandra Chin. I'd taken my grandmother's maiden name when I turned 18, wanting nothing that connected me to Patricia Lynn Hendricks. But if she'd done enough digging into Meridian's staff directory. Alex? Send her up, I heard myself say. I had 3 minutes while she rode the elevator to the 8th floor. 3 minutes to decide what I was going to say to the woman who'd abandoned me 17 years ago, who'd killed a man 2 months ago, who was currently destroying another family while building her own. I hid my laptop and shoved the printed background check reports into my bedroom drawer. When the knock came, soft and polite, I took a deep breath and opened the door. She looked exactly like she had in the front yard that afternoon, except now she was smiling the warm, apologetic smile I remembered from childhood, the one that had always preceded a request for something. I'm so sorry to bother you at home, Patricia said, extending a manicured hand. I'm Michelle Roberts. I think there might be some confusion about my background check. Her eyes scanned my face with polite interest, showing no recognition whatsoever. She had no idea who I was. I stepped back to let her in, my heart hammering so hard I was certain she could hear it. Patricia, Michelle, walked into my living room with the casual confidence of someone who belonged everywhere she went. She perched on the edge of my couch, crossing her ankles neatly, and I noticed she still wore that small silver ring on her right pinky. The one I'd saved my allowance for 3 months to buy her for Christmas when I was 9. I hope you don't mind me stopping by, she continued, that familiar voice sending chills down my spine. I tried calling the office, but I kept getting voicemail. I'm just a little concerned because I start my new position on Monday, and I know background checks can sometimes flag things incorrectly. She paused, studying my face with the calculating look I remembered from childhood. You seem familiar. Have we met before? I don't think so, I managed. Would you like some water? That's very kind, thank you. I escaped to the kitchen, hands shaking as I filled a glass from the tap. Through the pass-through window, I could see her examining my bookshelf with casual interest. Her gaze lingered on my grandmother's photo, the woman who'd raised me after Patricia vanished, who'd worked double shifts at Chen's kitchen for 6 years to keep me fed and clothed. When I returned with the water, Patricia was holding my college diploma. Northwestern, very impressive. Business administration with a focus in human resources. You must be very good at reading people. The irony wasn't lost on me. It's part of the job. She set down the frame carefully and accepted the water with a grateful smile. I'm sure you understand my anxiety about the background check. I've been Michelle Roberts for 5 years now, but sometimes old paperwork gets mixed up in the system. Computer errors, you know. What kind of old paperwork? Her laugh was light, practiced. Oh, boring legal stuff for my divorce. My ex-husband was vindictive when things ended. He made some false reports to the authorities, claimed I'd taken money that was rightfully mine from our joint accounts. It was all cleared up eventually, but sometimes these things resurface in background checks. The casual way she rewrote history made my stomach turn. Robert Hendricks wasn't vindictive, he was dead. And the money hadn't been rightfully hers. That must have been difficult, I said carefully. Divorce can be complicated, especially when children are involved. Something flickered behind her eyes, so brief I almost missed it. No children from that marriage, thank God. Clean break. She sipped her water, then added, though I do have a son now. Tyler's 8, such a bright boy. He's the reason I'm so eager to start this new position. Kids are expensive, and David, that's my husband, he works so hard already. Tyler. The boy I'd watched run to her after school, calling her mom with complete trust. In her version of events, David was the one working hard, not the one being systematically deceived. How long have you been married? 3 wonderful years this December. We're planning a trip to Disneyland for Tyler's birthday next month, his first time. David's been saving for months. Her smile was radiant, genuinely happy. Sometimes I can hardly believe how lucky I am. After my first marriage was such a disaster, I never thought I'd find someone so kind and stable. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Text message notification, and I could see the preview. This is Detective Morrison from Sacramento PD. Following up on our conversation. Patricia's eyes flicked to the screen, but she couldn't read it from her angle. Still, I saw her posture shift slightly, that hyper-alert stillness I remembered from childhood whenever she sensed potential trouble. Popular evening for phone calls, she said lightly. I flipped the phone face down. Work stuff. So tell me more about these computer errors. What specifically are you worried might show up? She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a confidential whisper. Between you and me, my ex reported me for identity theft. Completely fabricated, of course, but you know how these things work. Once something's in the system, it takes forever to get removed. I just want to make sure it doesn't cost me this opportunity. David doesn't know about any of this, why worry him with ancient history? Ancient history. 2 months ago was ancient history. I could take a look at your report, I offered. Sometimes these situations can be resolved with additional documentation. Her face brightened. Would you? That would be such a relief. I have all the paperwork from when the charges were dismissed. Another lie, delivered with perfect sincerity. I'd need to see it tomorrow though. I don't have access to the system from home. Of course. I could meet you at the office first thing tomorrow morning. What time do you usually get in? 8:30. She stood, smoothing down her cardigan. Perfect. I'll be there at 8:30 sharp with everything you need. At the door, she turned back with that warm smile. Thank you so much for this. You have no idea what this job means to my family. But I did know. I knew exactly what it meant, another opportunity to disappear when things got complicated, another stable man to drain dry, another child to abandon when the game got boring. After she left, I sat staring at Detective Morrison's text message, following up on our conversation about Patricia Hendricks. We've coordinated with Riverside Heights PD for pickup tomorrow morning. Can you confirm she'll be at the workplace? Tomorrow morning. 8:30 sharp. I thought about Tyler's excited voice calling Mom, and David saving for months to take his family to Disneyland. I thought about Stephanie Walsh, 16 and alone, fighting to avoid foster care. I thought about Robert Hendricks and my grandmother and all the wreckage Patricia left behind wherever she went. My phone rang. Janet's number. Alex, I just got the weirdest call from building security. They said Michelle Roberts was in the lobby asking for you. Did she find you? She found me. What did she want? I looked at my grandmother's photo, remembering all those nights she'd worked late at the restaurant while I did homework alone at the kitchen table, waiting for her to come home. The woman who'd given up her retirement to raise her ex-daughter-in-law's abandoned child, who'd never lived to see justice done. She wanted to make sure tomorrow goes smoothly, I said. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, my mind cycling between tomorrow's confrontation and the weight of what I was about to set in motion. At 6:47 a.m., I gave up on sleep and made coffee with shaking hands. By 7:15, I was already in the office parking lot, watching for Patricia's car. She arrived at exactly 8:25, driving a silver Toyota Camry that probably belonged to David. Through my office window, I watched her check her reflection in the side mirror, straightening her blazer and smoothing her hair. Even facing potential exposure, she was meticulous about appearances. Some things never changed. Detective Morrison had texted again at midnight, officers will be in position by 8 a.m. Don't tip her off. Let her think it's a normal meeting until we arrive. Normal. As if anything about this situation could be normal. Patricia breezed through the lobby with her usual confidence, greeting our receptionist Karen with the warm familiarity of someone who already belonged here. I could hear her laugh echoing down the hallway, that musical sound that had once made me feel safe, back when I was too young to understand it was just another tool in her arsenal. Alexandra. Michelle Roberts is here to see you, Karen's voice came through the intercom. Send her back. Patricia appeared in my doorway carrying a manila folder thick with what I assumed were more fabricated documents. She dressed for success, navy blazer, pearl earrings, the kind of understated elegance that suggested competence and trustworthiness. The costume of someone who belonged in an accounting department, someone you trust with sensitive financial information. Good morning. I hope I'm not too early. She settled into the chair across from my desk, crossing her legs and placing the folder on her lap. I brought everything we discussed, divorce decree, documentation showing the charges were dismissed, even a character reference from my current supervisor. Current supervisor. I wondered which friend or accomplice she'd convinced to play that role. Let me pull up your file, I said, logging into the background check system. Patricia's real information filled the screen, the warrants, the aliases, the trail of destruction spanning 3 states. Behind her, I could see Karen leading 2 people in suits toward my office. Right on time. Is everything looking good? Patricia asked, leaning forward slightly. There was tension around her eyes now, the first crack in her composed facade. I know these computer systems can be confusing, mixing up similar names and birth dates. Actually, there does seem to be some confusion, I said carefully. The system shows some discrepancies with your information. Her laugh was light, but I caught the edge underneath. What kind of discrepancies? Well, for starters, it shows your real name as Patricia Lynn Hendricks, not Michelle Roberts. The change was instantaneous. Her face went completely blank, that careful mask slipping away to reveal something cold and calculating underneath. For a moment, she looked exactly like the woman who'd walked out of our apartment 17 years ago. I think there's been a mistake, she said slowly. No mistake. The fingerprints match perfectly. Patricia's eyes darted toward the door, and I saw her body tense as she registered the approaching footsteps. When Detective Morrison appeared in my doorway with a uniformed Riverside Heights officer, her shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. Patricia Lynn Hendricks. Detective Morrison held up his badge. We need you to come with us. You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and violation of multiple warrants. She stood slowly, the manila folder sliding to the floor and scattering fake documents across the carpet. As the officer moved behind her with handcuffs, Patricia looked directly at me for the first time with recognition dawning in her eyes. Alexandra, she said quietly. You've grown up. No thanks to you. The officer was reading her rights, but Patricia kept staring at me with something that might have been pride. You always were smart. Smarter than I gave you credit for. Smart enough to stop you from destroying another family. Her face hardened. You have no idea what you've just done to Tyler and David. They're innocent in all this. So was Stephanie Walsh. So was Robert Hendricks. At Robert's name, something flickered across her features, guilt, maybe, or just irritation at being caught. Then the professional mask slipped back into place. I'd like to call my lawyer, she said to Detective Morrison. As they led her away, Karen appeared in my doorway, eyes wide with shock. Alex, what just happened? Michelle seemed so nice. Michelle Roberts doesn't exist, I said, sinking into my chair. She never did. The next few hours passed in a blur of police interviews, paperwork, and the surreal experience of watching my colleagues process what had just happened. By noon, word had spread through the entire office that we'd nearly hired a wanted fugitive. Janet kept shaking her head and muttering about how convincing Patricia had been, how she'd seemed like such a devoted mother. That phrase stuck with me as I finally drove home around 3 p.m., emotionally drained and running on nothing but adrenaline and black coffee. Devoted mother. I wondered what Tyler was thinking right now, coming home from school to find his world turned upside down. Had anyone even told him yet, or was he still expecting his mom to help him with homework? My phone had been buzzing all day with calls from Detective Morrison, journalists who'd somehow gotten my number, and even a producer from some true crime podcast. I'd ignored them all, but as I pulled into my apartment complex, I saw a familiar blue Honda Civic in the visitor parking area. David. Patricia's husband, Tyler's stepfather, sitting behind the wheel with his head in his hands. I should have kept walking. Should have gone upstairs and let him work through whatever he needed to work through on his own. Instead, I found myself approaching his car, tapping gently on the passenger window. He looked up with red-rimmed eyes, and I could see he'd aged a decade since this morning. When he recognized me from somewhere, probably a photo Patricia had shown him from the office, his expression shifted to something between desperate hope and barely contained rage. You're the one from HR, he said, rolling down the window. The one who turned her in. Yes. Is it true? All of it. The police showed me paperwork, warrants, but Michelle, she wouldn't. Tyler calls her mom. His voice cracked on that last word. I crouched down beside his car, meeting his eyes. What did they tell you exactly? That her real name is Patricia something. That she's wanted in 3 states. That she stole money from her previous husband, who? He couldn't finish the sentence. They said there was a girl, Stephanie, that Michelle, Patricia, that she adopted illegally somehow. It's all true, David. I'm sorry. He laughed bitterly. Sorry. Everyone keeps saying they're sorry. The detective was sorry. Child Services was sorry when they came to evaluate our home. You know what no one's sorry about? The fact that my son is upstairs right now asking why mommy got arrested, and I don't have a single honest answer to give him. The weight of what I'd set in motion hit me fully for the first time. In my pursuit of justice for myself and Stephanie and Robert, I created another victim. An 8-year-old boy who'd lost the only mother he remembered. What will happen to Tyler? I asked. That depends. Turns out Patricia, Jesus, I can't even get used to that name, turns out she forged the adoption papers. Tyler's not legally mine either. His biological parents died in 2019, and somehow Patricia got custody through fake documents and a stolen social worker's identity. The whole thing was a con from the beginning. David wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Child Services says they'll try to place him with relatives if they can find any, but if not, foster care. Another kid headed for the system because Patricia had treated children like collectibles, gathering them up when they served her purposes and discarding them when they became inconvenient. I'm trying to file for emergency custody, David continued. I know I have no legal claim, but Tyler's been with me for 3 years. I'm the only real father he's ever known. My lawyer says it's a long shot, but I have to try. I thought about the scene I'd witnessed yesterday, David helping Tyler with homework, the genuine affection between them. Whatever Patricia's motives had been for creating this family, something real had grown from it. The police mentioned you work for the company where she applied, David said. You must have seen her background check, seen who she really was. I did. Why didn't you just reject her application quietly? Why involve the police? His voice wasn't accusatory, just exhausted. I mean, I understand you had to do your job, but I could have told him about my own history with Patricia, about the 17 years of wondering and anger and abandonment. Instead, I said, there's a 16-year-old girl in Sacramento named Stephanie Walsh. Patricia was her guardian before she came here. When Patricia disappeared, Stephanie lost everything, her home, her inheritance, even the man who'd been trying to help her. He's dead now. David's face went pale. Dead? Suicide. 2 weeks after Patricia cleaned out his bank accounts and vanished. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of Patricia's destruction settling between us like a physical thing. Finally, David started his car. I should get back to Tyler. He's with the babysitter, but he's scared. Keeps asking when mommy's coming home. He paused, looking at me through the passenger window. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. I just wish. I know. As David drove away, I realized my phone was buzzing again. This time it was a Sacramento area code I didn't recognize. Hello. Is this Alexandra Chin? The person who found Patricia Hendricks? The voice was young, tentative. Who is this? My name is Stephanie Walsh. I think Patricia was my mom for a while. The police gave me your number. They said you're the reason they found her. I closed my eyes, leaning against the wall of my apartment building. Stephanie. I've been thinking about you. I wanted to thank you, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. I know it probably sounds weird, but when she disappeared, I thought maybe I'd done something wrong. Like maybe if I'd been a better daughter, she wouldn't have left. You didn't do anything wrong, Stephanie. None of this was your fault. The police told me there are other people she hurt. Other kids like me. Yeah. There are. I keep thinking about them, you know. Wondering if they blame themselves too. She was quiet for a moment, then added, there's this boy, Tyler. He's 8. The police said Patricia was his mom too, before they arrested her. You know about Tyler? I asked Detective Morrison for details. I wanted to understand how many of us there are. Her voice got stronger, more determined. I was thinking maybe I could write him a letter or something. Let him know it's not his fault either. Would that be weird? I thought about Tyler upstairs, asking David when mommy was coming home, and about this remarkable 16-year-old girl who was worried about comforting other victims instead of drowning in her own trauma. I think that would be incredibly kind of you, Stephanie. The letter arrived at my office 3 days later, forwarded through Detective Morrison. Stephanie's handwriting was careful, almost childlike, but her words carried a maturity that made my chest ache. Dear Tyler. Asterisk, my name is Stephanie and I'm 16. The lady we both called mom was named Patricia, but she used different names with different people. I wanted you to know that what happened isn't your fault. Sometimes adults make bad choices and kids get hurt, but that doesn't mean we did anything wrong, asterisk. Asterisk, I know you're probably scared and confused. I was too when she first left. But the people taking care of you now, they're real. They won't disappear like she did, asterisk. Asterisk, if you ever want to write back, Detective Morrison said he could help us stay in touch. Maybe we could be like brother and sister, since we both know what it's like to lose the same person, asterisk. Love, Stephanie. P.S. I'm good at math if you ever need homework help. I was still reading when Janet knocked on my office door, her expression grim. Alex? There's someone here to see you. Says it's about the Patricia Hendricks case. The woman in our lobby was impeccably dressed, designer suit, expensive handbag, the kind of polished appearance that screamed high-powered attorney. She extended a manicured hand with a practiced smile. Miss Chin. I'm Victoria Manning, Patricia Hendricks' legal counsel. I was hoping we could discuss your involvement in my client's arrest. I don't think we have anything to discuss. Actually, we do. Her smile never wavered, but her eyes were calculating. You see, there are some procedural questions about how you obtained and used my client's background check information. HIPAA violations, potential illegal surveillance, breach of privacy protocols. My stomach dropped. I ran a standard employment background check, which you then used to orchestrate a police sting operation. Without proper warrants or legal oversight. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. My client has been living as Michelle Roberts for 5 years. She has a family, a community, established credit and employment history. By your actions, you've destroyed a lawfully established identity. Lawfully established? She's using a fake social security number. Prove it was fake when she applied for it 5 years ago. Prove she knew it was fraudulent. Victoria's voice remained pleasant, conversational. The burden of proof is quite high in identity theft cases, particularly when the alleged perpetrator has maintained consistent use of the identity for an extended period. I stared at her, realizing where this was heading. She's going to claim Michelle Roberts is her real identity now. My client has been Michelle Roberts longer than she was Patricia Hendricks in her adult life. She has a marriage certificate, tax returns, medical records. Her son knows no other name for her. Her son isn't legally hers either. According to documents filed with Sacramento County, the adoption was processed through proper channels. If there were clerical errors in the system, that's hardly Patricia's fault. Victoria leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Ms. Chen, what was your relationship to Patricia Hendricks before this employment application? The question hit like a physical blow. She knew. Somehow, Patricia had figured out who I was and told her lawyer. I have no idea what you're talking about. Patricia mentioned she found your reaction during the arrest quite personal. Almost vindictive. She's wondering if perhaps you had prior knowledge of her identity before running that background check. Victoria's smile turned predatory. Because if you did, if you knew who she was and deliberately set up this arrest without proper legal protocols, well, that opens up some very interesting questions about harassment, entrapment, and abuse of your position. My phone buzzed. Text message from Detective Morrison, asterisk Patricia's lawyer is claiming prosecutorial misconduct. Says you had personal vendetta. Need to talk ASAP, asterisk. Victoria glanced at my phone screen. Detective Morrison is a good man, but he's in a difficult position. If it turns out his key witness had undisclosed personal motivations, it compromises the entire case. What do you want? My client is willing to plead to minor fraud charges, time served, probation, restitution to be negotiated. In exchange, she continues living as Michelle Roberts, maintains custody of her son through David's emergency filing, and everyone moves on with their lives. What about Stephanie Walsh? What about Robert Hendricks? Tragic situations, but unrelated to my client's current charges. You can't prosecute someone for another person's suicide, Ms. Chen. Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt. Patricia has asked to meet with you privately. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., at the county jail. I think you'll find her quite reasonable when she's not being ambushed. After Victoria left, I sat staring at Stephanie's letter to Tyler, her careful words about adults making bad choices. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to protect these kids, I might have handed Patricia exactly what she needed to escape consequences again. My computer chimed with an email from David. * Tyler keeps asking about the letter from his sister. Can we arrange for them to meet? I think it would help him process everything. Also, CPS approved my emergency custody filing pending Patricia's case resolution. Thank you for giving me the chance to fight for him. *. Patricia was right about one thing, I had gotten personal. But looking at that email, thinking about Tyler finally having stability and Stephanie finding family in the wreckage, I realized I wasn't sorry. The question was whether that would be enough when Patricia tried to charm her way out of prison tomorrow. The county jail visiting room smelled like industrial disinfectant and desperation. I sat at a scratched metal table, watching other families navigate their own complicated conversations through reinforced glass. When they brought Patricia in, she looked smaller somehow, orange jumpsuit instead of designer blazers, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup to hide the lines around her eyes. She sat down across from me with that familiar calculating smile, as if we were meeting for coffee instead of discussing her criminal charges. Thank you for coming, Alexandra. I wasn't sure you would. Your lawyer was very persuasive about the legal complications I'm apparently facing. Patricia laughed, a sound that still made my skin crawl after all these years. Victoria is thorough, I'll give her that. But this isn't about legal threats. I wanted to explain some things, now that we're being honest with each other. Honest. That's rich, coming from you. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. Walking out on you was. She paused, as if searching for the right words. It was the hardest thing I ever did. Hardest? You made it look pretty easy. $17 in a cookie jar and a note saying you'd be back soon. I left that money for you because it was all I had. Patricia Hendricks was broke, Alexandra. Completely broke. The pharmacy job barely covered rent, Gran was working herself to death trying to help us, and I had creditors calling every hour threatening wage garnishment. Her voice dropped lower. There were men looking for me. Men I owed money to. Dangerous men. I stared at her, thrown by this version of events I'd never heard. What men? I had a gambling problem. Started small, scratch tickets, office pools, but by the time you were 10, I was into underground poker games for amounts I couldn't afford. When I couldn't pay, they threatened to hurt you to get to me. Patricia's hands were folded on the table, perfectly still. So I disappeared. I became someone else, someone without debts or dangerous associates. Someone who couldn't lead those men back to my daughter. That's a convenient story, but it doesn't explain the identity theft, the fake social security numbers, stealing from Robert Hendricks. Robert was never supposed to get hurt. For the first time, genuine emotion cracked her voice. I took what I needed to disappear, yes, but I never imagined he would. That he would blame himself for my choices. You stole $43,000 and left him holding custody of a child who wasn't legally his. What did you think would happen? Patricia was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. I thought he was stronger. Like Gran was. Like you turned out to be. Don't you dare compare yourself to Gran. She raised me because you abandoned me, not because you were protecting me. And look how you turned out. Northwestern graduate, successful career, strong enough to track down your own mother and bring her to justice. There was something like pride in her voice. Gran did better with you than I ever could have. Because she stayed. Because she didn't run away when things got difficult. No, she ran toward the difficult things. Just like you did when you decided to turn me in instead of letting me disappear again. Patricia leaned forward slightly. Do you know what Tyler said when they arrested me? He asked David if it was his fault, if he'd been too loud that morning and made Mommy sad. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's not my fault. That's yours. Of course it is. Just like it's my fault that Stephanie spent months wondering what she did wrong. Just like it's my fault you grew up thinking your mother didn't love you enough to stay. Patricia's voice was steady now, matter of fact. But Tyler has David, who's fighting for him. Stephanie has her strength and her intelligence. And you have your justice. Justice. Is that what you think this is? Isn't it? The scared 11-year-old finally gets to see her mother face consequences. The abandoned child gets to abandon back. She tilted her head, studying my face. The question is, does it feel like you thought it would? I wanted to tell her yes, that seeing her in handcuffs had satisfied something deep and broken inside me. But the truth was more complicated. Every time I thought about Tyler asking David why Mommy got arrested, or Stephanie writing letters to comfort other abandoned children, the satisfaction curdled into something uglier. Victoria says you want to plead down to minor charges. I want Tyler to keep the only father he's ever really known. I want David to have his son legally. I want Stephanie to get the inheritance money that's rightfully hers, all of it, plus interest. Patricia's voice was calm, businesslike. I want to serve my time and disappear permanently. No more Michelle Roberts, no more Patricia Hendricks. Just, gone. And in exchange, you tell Detective Morrison that our meeting was coincidental. That you had no prior knowledge of my identity when you ran that background check. That you acted purely in the company's interests. She paused. One more lie, Alexandra. But this time, one that protects the children instead of destroying them. I stared across the metal table at the woman who'd shaped my entire worldview through her absence. Patricia's proposal hung in the air between us like a lifeline that might also be a noose. You want me to lie to the police, I said slowly. To commit perjury to save your plea deal. I want you to protect Tyler and Stephanie from a prolonged legal battle that will traumatize them further. Her voice remained steady, reasonable. Detective Morrison's case falls apart if you had personal motivation. You know that. Maybe it should fall apart. Maybe I did let my personal feelings cloud my judgment. Patricia leaned back slightly, surprise flickering across her features. That's not the answer I expected. My phone vibrated against the table. Text from David, *. Tyler wrote a letter back to Stephanie. Asked me to read it to make sure the spelling was right. Dear Sister Stephanie, thank you for saying it's not my fault. David says we can visit you when Mommy's case is done. I hope you like Disney movies. God, Alex, this kid's heart is going to break no matter what happens, *. I showed Patricia the message. She read it twice, her composed mask slipping. He still calls me Mommy, she whispered. Because he doesn't understand what you are yet. What I am is a woman who gave that boy 3 years of stability. Who helped him with nightmares about his real parents' accident. Who taught him to read and celebrated every small victory. Her voice cracked. I know you don't believe this, but I love Tyler. I love him the way I should have loved you. Love doesn't mean stealing children and building families on lies. No, but it means fighting for them when everything falls apart. Patricia straightened, that familiar resolve returning. David's custody filing will be approved if I plead to minor charges. Tyler gets to keep his father, his home, his school. If I fight these charges and lose, if I go away for 15 years on felony convictions, David has no legal standing. Tyler goes into the system. She was right, and we both knew it. I'd researched the custody laws extensively since our first meeting. Without biological or legal ties, David's claim to Tyler was entirely dependent on Patricia's cooperation. What about Stephanie's money? Already in motion. Victoria's negotiating full restitution, $67,000 including interest. Stephanie gets her inheritance, plus enough for college. Patricia pulled a folded paper from her pocket. I had Victoria draw up a contact restriction order. If the plea goes through, I'm legally prohibited from contacting Tyler, David, or Stephanie for 10 years minimum. Clean break. I unfolded the document. It was thorough, no letters, no birthday cards, no third-party messages. Patricia Hendricks would become a ghost again, but this time legally mandated. 10 years. Tyler will be 18 by then. Old enough to decide if he wants to know the truth about his childhood. Old enough to make his own choices about forgiveness. She paused. Just like you were when you decided to find me. Detective Morrison appeared at the visiting room entrance, scanning the crowd until his eyes found me. He looked tired, frustrated, exactly like someone whose case was developing complications. Your detective friend looks concerned, Patricia observed. Victoria's been raising questions about proper procedures, chain of custody, motivation for the investigation. Prosecutors hate messy cases. Morrison was walking toward us now, his expression grim. When he reached our table, he nodded politely to Patricia before focusing on me. Ms. Chen, we need to talk. There are some inconsistencies in the timeline we need to clarify. Patricia stood, smoothing her orange jumpsuit. I'll leave you two to discuss the details. Alexandra, think about what's best for the children. That's all any of us can do now. As the guards led her away, she turned back once. For what it's worth, I'm proud of the person you became. Gran would be proud too. Then she was gone, leaving me alone with Detective Morrison and a choice that would determine the fate of 3 different children across 2 states. Morrison sat down heavily. Tell me the truth, Alex. Did you know who Patricia Hendricks was before you ran that background check? I stared at Detective Morrison across that scratched metal table, Patricia's words still echoing in my mind. Think about what's best for the children. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made everything look stark and unforgiving. Did I know who she was? I repeated, buying myself time. That's a complicated question. Morrison's jaw tightened. It's actually pretty straightforward, Alex. Either you recognized her name when you processed the application, or you didn't. Through the reinforced glass windows, I could see other inmates being led back to their cells, their orange uniforms a constant reminder of consequences. Patricia was somewhere among them now, waiting for my answer to determine whether she'd spend the next 15 years behind bars or walk away with probation and a clean slate. I need you to understand something first, I said carefully. There's a 16-year-old girl in Sacramento who lost everything because of Patricia's choices. And there's an 8-year-old boy here who's calling a stranger, Daddy, because it's the only stability he's ever known. Alex. Morrison's voice carried a warning. Just answer the question. My phone buzzed again. Another text from David, * Tyler's teacher says he's been acting out at school. Keeps asking other kids if their mommies ever got arrested. I don't know how to help him process this, *. I showed Morrison the message. This is what's at stake. Not just Patricia's freedom, but Tyler's entire future. If her case falls apart on a technicality, David loses his custody bid. Morrison read the text, his expression softening slightly. I get that you care about the kid. But if you had prior knowledge and didn't disclose it, it compromises everything. Patricia's lawyer is already claiming entrapment, selective prosecution, violation of her civil rights. Victoria Manning is good at her job. Too good. She's got the DA's office nervous. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Look, between you and me, the case against Patricia is strong even without your testimony. We have the financial records, the fake documents, the warrant violations. But if there's any suggestion you orchestrated this arrest for personal reasons. Then she walks. And next month she's Jennifer Thompson in Phoenix, stealing from some other family. Morrison's phone rang, and he glanced at the caller ID with frustration. That's my captain. 3rd call in an hour. While Morrison stepped away to take the call, I found myself thinking about that afternoon 17 years ago when I came home from school to find Patricia's note. Be back soon, it had said. Take care of yourself. Even at 11, I'd known she was lying. But Tyler was 8, and he still believed in a lie. Still believed his mommy was good and kind and would come home eventually. Maybe that innocence was worth protecting, even if it meant protecting Patricia in the process. Morrison returned, his face grim. That was about the Sacramento connection. Turns out there might be more victims. A woman in Portland filed a missing persons report 3 years ago. Husband disappeared with their joint savings and her daughter from a previous marriage. Description matches Patricia perfectly. My stomach dropped. How many kids has she taken? We're trying to piece that together now. But here's the thing, if your case falls apart, we lose our best lead on tracking the others. He sat back down, fixing me with an intense stare. So I'm going to ask you one more time, and I need you to think very carefully about your answer. Did you have any prior knowledge of Patricia Hendricks' identity before you processed Michelle Roberts' employment application? The visiting room had grown quieter, other conversations winding down as visiting hours neared their end. In 20 minutes, I'd walk out of here and drive home to my quiet apartment, while Patricia returned to her cell and Tyler asked David again when Mommy was coming home. I thought about Stephanie Walsh, fighting to avoid foster care while trying to comfort other abandoned children. I thought about some unknown daughter in Portland, wondering what happened to the woman she called Mom. I thought about Tyler's letter to his sister, asking if she liked Disney movies. And I thought about my grandmother, working double shifts to raise a child who wasn't hers, never living to see justice done. Detective Morrison, I said slowly, meeting his eyes. I think there's something else you need to know about Patricia Hendricks. His pen was already moving across his notepad. What kind of something? Outside the visiting room windows, the afternoon sun was setting, casting long shadows across the jail parking lot. Somewhere in this building, Patricia was probably calculating her next move, confident that maternal guilt would save her one more time. But she'd miscalculated something fundamental about the 11-year-old she'd abandoned. I'd learned long ago that some people don't deserve to be saved. Patricia Hendricks, I said, is my mother. The words hung in the air between us like a confession. Detective Morrison's pen stopped moving, his eyes widening as the implications hit him. Your mother, he repeated slowly. Patricia Hendricks abandoned you when you were 11 years old. 17 years ago. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd kept hidden in my contacts, the only picture I had of Patricia and me together, taken at some long-forgotten birthday party when I was maybe 7. She left a note saying she'd be back soon and $17 in a cookie jar. Morrison studied the photo, comparing it to Patricia's current mugshot on his tablet. Jesus Christ, Alex. Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? Because I knew it would compromise the case. I knew Victoria Manning would use it to claim prosecutorial misconduct, and I knew Patricia would find a way to escape consequences again. I took the phone back, staring at my younger self grinning next to a woman who was already planning her exit. But there are other victims you don't know about yet. The Portland case. That's just the beginning. I opened my laptop bag and pulled out a folder I'd been compiling for the past week. I've been tracking Patricia's aliases through social media, public records, marriage certificates. She's been doing this for at least 12 years, maybe longer. Morrison opened the folder, his expression growing darker as he flipped through pages of documentation. Michelle Roberts, Patricia Hendricks, Sarah Coleman, Jennifer Walsh. He looked up sharply. Walsh. Like Stephanie. Patricia's been reusing surnames from previous victims. Jennifer Walsh was Stephanie's biological mother's name before the car accident. Patricia stole the identity of a dead woman to gain custody of her daughter. I pointed to another document. Sarah Coleman was married to a man named Marcus in Portland. They had a 6-year-old daughter named Emma when Sarah suddenly disappeared in 2021. Taking Emma with her. Who probably became Tyler a year later, after Patricia moved here and married David under another fake identity. I watched Morrison's face as the pattern became clear. She targets single fathers or widowers with children. Builds trust, gains access to their finances and family documents, then disappears with whatever she can steal, including the kids. Morrison was already reaching for his phone. I need to call Portland PD immediately. If Emma Coleman is actually Tyler. David showed me Tyler's school records yesterday. He's been enrolled as Tyler Roberts since September 2021, just 2 months after Emma Coleman disappeared from Portland. The timeline matches perfectly. What about the father? Marcus Coleman. I pulled out another document, a death certificate dated October 2021. Apparent suicide. Found in his garage 3 months after Emma disappeared. But look at the details, he'd been working with a private investigator, spending his life savings trying to find his daughter. The PI's report suggests Patricia left just enough false clues to keep Marcus chasing ghosts instead of finding the real trail. Morrison stared at the death certificate, his jaw clenched. She's not just a con artist. She's a serial killer who uses despair as her weapon. And Tyler has no idea his real name is Emma, or that his father died trying to find him. I closed the folder, meeting Morrison's eyes. That's why I had to tell you the truth about who I am. This isn't about my personal vendetta anymore. It's about stopping her before she destroys another family. How many others do you think there are? I found evidence of at least 6 different identities over the past decade. But Patricia's smart, she varies her patterns, changes her appearance, never stays in one state long enough to establish connections between cases. I pulled up a map on my laptop showing locations across the western United States. She's been zigzagging through California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Nevada. Always moving, always hunting. Morrison was taking notes furiously now. We need to coordinate with law enforcement in all these jurisdictions. If even half of what you're showing me is accurate, it means there are children out there who don't know their real names, and families who are still looking for them. I thought about Tyler's innocent letter to Stephanie, about David fighting for custody of a child who'd already been stolen from one father. The question is, what happens to Tyler when he learns the truth? The revelation about Tyler's true identity hit Detective Morrison like a physical blow. He stared at the death certificate for Marcus Coleman, then looked back at the school enrollment records I'd compiled. So David has been raising a kidnapped child for 3 years, and he has no idea, Morrison said quietly. And Tyler thinks his real father abandoned him, when actually his father died trying to find him. It gets worse. I pulled up another document on my laptop. I tracked down Marcus Coleman's sister in Portland, Rebecca Coleman Martinez. She's been searching for Emma since the disappearance. Look at this. I showed him a Facebook post from Rebecca's account, dated just 2 weeks ago, 3 years without my nephew Emma. The police have given up, but I haven't. If anyone has any information about Emma Coleman or the woman calling herself Sarah Coleman, please contact me. Emma would be 8 now. He loved dinosaurs and building blocks and always asked for extra pickles on his sandwiches. I just want to bring him home. Morrison read the post twice. Extra pickles. Does Tyler? David mentioned it during one of our conversations. Tyler's obsessed with pickles on everything, sandwiches, burgers, even pizza. It's one of his quirks. I scrolled down to show more of Rebecca's posts, hundreds of them over 3 years, each one a desperate plea for information about her missing nephew. We have to contact her immediately. I already did. I pulled out my phone and showed him a text conversation. Rebecca's flying here tomorrow morning. She has photo albums, medical records, even a video of Emma singing happy birthday that she wants to show Tyler, carefully, with child psychologists present. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. This changes everything about Patricia's case. Child abduction across state lines, identity theft of a deceased person, fraud related to custody documents, we're looking at federal charges now. Which means Victoria Manning's plea deal becomes irrelevant. Exactly. The DA won't negotiate when we're talking about kidnapping. He closed my folder and leaned back in his chair. Alex, what you've uncovered here, it's going to turn Tyler's world upside down. Are you prepared for that responsibility? The question caught me off guard. In my determination to expose Patricia's crimes, I hadn't fully considered what it would mean for an 8-year-old boy to learn that everything he knew about his identity was a lie. I keep thinking about what Rebecca wrote in her posts, I said. She mentions that Emma used to have nightmares after his parents died in that car accident. Patricia told David that Tyler had nightmares about his real parents' accident when they first got together. She was using his actual trauma to make her story more believable. Manipulating a grieving child's memories to construct her cover story. Morrison shook his head in disgust. That's sociopathic behavior. My phone buzzed with a call from David. I showed Morrison the caller ID. I should take this. He doesn't know about Tyler's real identity yet. Morrison nodded. Don't tell him over the phone. This kind of news needs to be delivered in person, with proper support systems in place. I answered the call. Hi David. Alex, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. David's voice was strained, exhausted. Tyler's been having these nightmares lately, not about Patricia getting arrested, but older memories. He keeps talking about a man with a beard who used to read him stories about dinosaurs. Patricia always told me his father was abusive, that he never cared about Tyler, but... I met Morrison's eyes across the table. But what, David? But Tyler remembers being loved. He remembers someone who called him a different name, someone who was kind to him. And when I look at Patricia's story now, knowing what she's capable of... David's voice cracked. Alex, I think Tyler might have been kidnapped. I think his real father might still be out there looking for him. The visiting room had grown quiet around us. In a few hours, Rebecca Coleman Martinez would board a plane to meet the nephew she'd been searching for. Tyler would go to bed as Tyler Roberts and wake up to learn his real name was Emma Coleman, that his beloved David wasn't his stepfather but his rescuer, and that the woman he called mom had stolen him from a family that never stopped loving him. David, I said carefully, I think you need to come to the police station tomorrow morning. There are some things we need to discuss in person. 6 months later, I sat in a Sacramento courthouse watching Rebecca Coleman Martinez hold her nephew's hand as he testified via closed-circuit video from a child-friendly room down the hall. Emma, he'd chosen to keep the name Tyler but legally reclaimed Emma as his middle name, spoke clearly into the camera about the man with the beard who used to make dinosaur pancakes on Sunday mornings. My real daddy loved me, Tyler Emma Roberts Coleman said, his 8-year-old voice carrying across the silent courtroom. The lady said he was mean, but I remember him singing to me when I had bad dreams. At the defendant's table, Patricia sat in an orange jumpsuit, her hands folded as she listened to the child she'd stolen describe the father she'd let die of grief. Her attorney, a public defender now, since Victoria Manning had withdrawn when the federal charges were filed, occasionally whispered in her ear, but Patricia's attention remained fixed on the video monitor. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Chen, no relation, despite the surname that made me do a double take during introductions, had spent 3 days methodically destroying Patricia's web of identities. The evidence I'd compiled had led to the discovery of 4 other missing children across 6 states, 2 more suspicious deaths, and financial crimes totaling over $300,000. Your Honor, Sarah Chen addressed the judge, the defendant's pattern is clear. She systematically targeted vulnerable families, inserted herself into their lives, and then disappeared with their children and assets when maintaining the deception became difficult. The psychological trauma inflicted on both the stolen children and the families she destroyed cannot be quantified. Judge Patricia Williamson, the irony of sharing a first name with the defendant wasn't lost on anyone, nodded gravely as she reviewed the sentencing guidelines. Ms. Hendricks, you've been convicted on 14 federal charges including kidnapping, identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Before I impose sentence, do you have anything to say to this court? Patricia rose slowly, and for a moment she looked exactly like the woman who used to braid my hair before school. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. Your Honor, I won't insult this court or my victims by claiming my actions were justified. I made choices that destroyed lives, that took children from families who loved them, that caused immeasurable pain. She paused, glancing at the video monitor where Tyler was now coloring with Rebecca in the witness room. I particularly want to apologize to my daughter, Alexandra, who suffered because of my abandonment 17 years ago, and who had the courage to ensure that other children wouldn't suffer the same fate. Judge Williamson consulted her notes. Ms. Hendricks, the court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 15 years. You will also pay full restitution to all victims, totaling $347,892, to be garnished from any prison wages or future assets. As the bailiffs led Patricia away, she caught my eye one last time. No smile this time, no manipulation or false promises. Just a slight nod, acknowledgement, maybe, or something that might have been respect. Outside the courthouse, David lifted Tyler onto his shoulders while Rebecca walked beside them, pointing out interesting architecture. The adoption papers making David Tyler's legal father had been finalized last month, with Rebecca maintaining regular visitation rights as his biological aunt. Stephanie had driven down from Sacramento for the sentencing, and she and Tyler had spent the morning comparing notes about their shared experience of loving someone who'd never really existed. "It's over," Detective Morrison said, joining me on the courthouse steps. "Patricia Hendricks is never getting out." I watched Tyler laugh at something David whispered in his ear, this resilient kid who'd survived loss and deception and still somehow learned to trust again. Stephanie was showing him photos on her phone, probably pictures from her first semester at UC Davis, which she'd started in the fall using the inheritance money Patricia had been forced to return. The background check that had started this whole chain of events seemed like ancient history now, filed away in some HR database as a routine criminal screening that had revealed far more than anyone expected. But standing there in the afternoon sunlight, watching two stolen children reclaim their lives while their captor disappeared behind prison walls, I realized Patricia had been wrong about one thing. This wasn't about abandoning back or getting revenge. This was about making sure no other 8-year-old would come home from school to find the only parent they knew had vanished into thin air, leaving nothing behind but lies and a devastating realization that love could be just another con game. Some people don't deserve to be saved. But the children they damage, they deserve every chance to heal.